It's a normal day at a power plant in Hong Kong when suddenly a mysterious person hacks into their system. The cooling machine is shut down, and soon the heat causes a big explosion. Hundreds of workers are killed or severely wounded, and people within a 10-kilometer radius are evacuated. Meanwhile, in a prison in the USA, hacker Nick is handcuffed and taken out of his cell. The cops find a hidden device among his things and discover all of the criminals on Nick's block have recently received some money in their accounts. So they think Nick did it. He immediately denies it, so he's put in solitary confinement, where he exercises to keep himself busy. In China, Captain Dewey explains to the government that the power plant was hacked using a remote access tool, or RAT. This was possible because the plant's systems are very old and lack security. It's also revealed that the same model reactors in the USA were attacked at the same time. Dewey thinks he can catch the hacker, but he needs access to the plant's computers to do the tracking. Sadly, the power plant is still incredibly hot, and it's impossible to enter, so Dewey will have to wait for cooldown. Dewey asks the FBI for help, and Agent Carol has to convince her boss that working with China is a good idea. Eventually, Dewey gets the code from the hacker attack on the American plant, but he doesn't have the knowledge to crack it. He decides to recruit his sister Leon, who is a network engineer. That night, the Mercantile Trade Exchange in Chicago is also targeted by the hacker, and all the numbers start going up at an insane speed. The next day, the FBI has a meeting to analyze the case, and by looking at the code, they conclude the rat was written by two people. Dewey isn't impressed by the report because it's incredibly basic and asks Carol to get Nick to help them. Nick has a long history of robbing banks with his hacking, and Carol thinks it's an awful idea to trust him, so Dewey has no choice but to share some secrets. Half of the rat code was written by him as a gag while he was in college, and the other half was written by Nick. It seems the hacker stole their code and modified it to do the attacks. If they want to catch this guy, they'll need the person who truly understands the code. An FBI agent visits Nick in prison, offering to get him out if he helps them with the case. However, Nick reads the document and notices he'll only be out for a couple of weeks, so he refuses to sign it. Instead, he offers a new deal. If he catches the hacker, his sentence ends. If he doesn't, then they can send him back to jail. The FBI is so desperate that they take his deal, and Dewey picks Nick up for a warm reunion. During their flight, Dewey shows Nick the modified code, and Carol scolds him, since part of the deal was that Nick could only get computer access under FBI supervision. Moments later, Nick is allowed to look at the terminals of the Mercantile Trade Exchange, which have the safest firewall. The only way to insert a virus would be in person, but only the boss has access to it with his thumbprint. Nick looks at the information in the system and discovers someone hid some code in the boss's USB drive. While thinking about potential suspects, the boss remembers a guy named Lozano, who only worked there for a month and mysteriously disappeared. Later, Nick and the siblings analyze the code and notice unfinished lines. They concluded the hacker needed money fast, so he attacked the soy market to fill his account, and now he can spend his time finishing the code. This means he's planning an even bigger attack. Meanwhile, the FBI finds Lozano on the security cameras, and by looking at his tattoos, they discover he's a part of a gang and faked his identity to get the job. Sending a bunch of agents to see him would look suspicious, so Nick and Leanne volunteer to do the talking, although Nick is given an ankle bracelet monitor to keep him from running away. The duo enters Lozano's apartment only to find him dead with a needle in his arm. Nick and Leanne check Lozano's computers and find powerful devices that encrypt all his data and keep him anonymous with no IP address, which the hacker must have set up for him. There's a mysterious email asking for a meeting, and Nick answers it to confirm time and place. The agent watching over Nick tries to report what happened, but he has no signal, so Nick takes his phone to fix it. He uses this chance to modify the app that keeps track of his ankle monitor. In the meantime, Carol and Dewey ask the boss of the trade exchange market for access to all their client files. At first, he refuses because it would break confidentiality, but he gives in when Carol threatens to tell the press that his market isn't safe anymore. Once they get all the files, Dewey and Carol look at the list of sales until they find 3 large volume trades that were timed perfectly to take advantage of the hack. They're linked to bank accounts in Hong Kong. In the evening, Nick and Lee go to a restaurant to wait for the hacker, but he doesn't show up. Nick notices security cameras and sneaks into the back room to check the computer. It turns out the hacker has been watching them through the cameras all along. Checking the information in the camera software, Nick notices that the hacker has an IP in Ukraine and sends him a message, only to get insulted. A furious Nick returns to the main room and tells Leanne they should leave. But at that moment, a bunch of thugs enter the restaurant and ask them who they are. Without a word, Nick starts fighting them using any object he can grab, including the furniture. He manages to bring most of the group down, and when the last one comes for him with a knife, he breaks a bottle to counterattack, and easily wins the fight. Afterward, Nick calls Dawai to warn him that the email had been bait, and now the hacker knows they're on him. Dawai announces they'll travel to China in the morning to follow the bank accounts, so Nick and Leon spend the rest of the night getting naughty. The next day, the group arrives at the power plant, where they're still rescuing victims of the explosion. The building is still hot, so they have to wait to access the computer. Next, they meet with the local police, who have tracked down the owners of the bank accounts. They seem to be three average thugs connected to a criminal known as Kasser, so they must be the hacker's front. The cops have been following them and notice no suspicious activity, but Nick checks their daily routes at the same time and discovers an address in common. Dawai and Nick go to that location and find a police van doing surveillance on a Lebanese trafficker. They check the van's security footage and discover that the account owners come to this place every morning but do nothing but text. With a phone in hand, Nick searches the area until he finds a special signal and discovers a hidden transmitter in the bushes. They immediately connect it to a computer and confirm that the three account owners just need to walk by to pick up the messages from the hacker, which they can delete later to leave no evidence. Sometime later, the team notices that the money in the three accounts has been moved, which means the hacker has cashed out. When Dawai rushes to inform Nick, he discovers he's been doing it with his sister. The team leaves on a helicopter to go after Kassar, and during the ride, Dawai tells Nick to reconsider his relationship with Leon since there's a chance he may go back to jail. By the time they make it to the location, the team discovers the surveillance officers have been killed. They burst into the building and search every room, but it appears Kasser and his thugs are gone. There's a hidden passage in the floor, so the team descends to continue their search. Suddenly, the criminals open fire to start killing agents, who immediately shoot back. Kasser is there too, and he grabs an agent to use him as a shield. He shoots a few more incoming men before stabbing his hostage in the neck. Once Kasser and his men leave the tunnel, they get ready to blow it up, but the other half of the team is already waiting at the exit, and they open fire. While the thugs shoot back at them, Kasser activates the explosives, which make the tunnel crumble and kill all the agents inside. Without this backup, the team at the exit is overwhelmed, and more agents die during the shootout. They have no choice but to stay hidden behind some containers, which gives the criminals the opening to escape on a boat. As they sail away, Kasser is angry to notice one of his men is dying. That night, Kasser picks up a special package from traffickers on a big ship before returning to the mainland. In the meantime, Dawai is informed that the temperature at the plant has lowered enough for them to go in without instantly dying. It's still pretty hot, though, so they have to protect themselves with hazmat suits and work fast. When they enter the computer room, they can see that there are still bodies around. One of the agents collapses under the heat, so Nick tells Dawai to take him out while he finishes the job. He breaks an emergency cabinet to get an axe and hits the servers, only for the resulting vibrations to cause some parts of the ceiling to fall. Nick just keeps going until he opens the server and retrieves a hard drive. Then Nick and Dawai carry the sick agent out together, after the emergency team lowers the drive's temperature. They connect it to a computer and find fragments of the malware, but it's too corrupted to get any useful information. Nick remembers that the government got his info back after he tried to delete it when they arrested him, and Carol admits they have a software called Black Widow that could do the job. She asks her boss for permission, but he refuses to lend it to China or a criminal hacker. Since the software has remote login, Nick volunteers to hack into the government system to use it anyway. Carol is so desperate that she agrees, and the whole team except Leon leaves the room so they can deny knowing about this if it goes wrong. Nick sends Carol's boss a fake email asking him to change his password, and his malware detects the new one, allowing him to access Black Widow. The team goes to catch dinner, unaware that someone is following them and putting something under their car. By the time they come back, Nick has the hacker's IP address. It turns out his home server is in Indonesia, but Nick can't crack it because it's hosted by a company exclusive to hackers, which means it's bulletproof. Their only option is to go there in person and get the actual physical drives. Carol won't get any favors after she asked for Black Widow, so Dawai promises to talk to his superiors to get them visas and badges that work in Indonesia. Sometime later, Leon manages to get into the hosting company's accounting records and notices some payments to a software that rents satellite time. The hacker has bought high-resolution shots of the coast of Malaysia. Meanwhile, the Chinese government tells Dawai that the FBI has informed them about Nick hacking into confidential software, and they want him back in jail. Dawai tries to point out that without Nick, they wouldn't have found the hacker, but his bosses don't listen. The rest of the team gets to go to Indonesia, but Nick must be sent to the USA. In the morning, Dawai warns Leon with a text, so she and Nick immediately sneak out. Carol gets a call from her boss to scold her for what happened, and she tries to explain her hands were tied, but she still gets orders to hand Nick over. When she goes to his room, he's already gone. They realize Nick modified the agent's monitor app and quickly fix it to get his current location. Dawai secretly meets with Nick to tell him that the Americans think China has Black Widow because of him, so he asks him to run and promises they'll meet later in Indonesia. Lean wants to come too, but Nick thinks it's too dangerous, so they argue until she leaves them alone. While Carol and another agent try to follow the bracelet signal, Lean moves ahead and waits for Nick and Dawai at the airport. Nick has a serious conversation with her until she understands she can't date a fugitive. Their conversation is interrupted when the car suddenly explodes behind them, instantly killing Dawai. Kasser and his men are nearby and open fire, so Nick has to hold a grieving Lean to keep her hidden. At that moment, Carol and her agent arrive to join the shootout, and they manage to kill a couple of thugs. However, they are quickly shot down as well. Nick and Lean use this distraction to run away, and they hide inside the subway station, rushing into the train right before the enemy can catch them. Lean announces she wants revenge, and Nick agrees to bring her along. Moments later, Lean pays some crooks to get them fake passports and remove Nick's ankle monitor. Instead of Indonesia, they decide to go to Malaysia to search for what the hacker wants. The police are following the monitor's app to find Nick. However, it's already been thrown into the ocean. By bribing the owner of a private plane, Lean and Nick manage to fly to Malaysia. They follow the coordinates from the satellite shot, but the area appears to be empty. Suddenly, they notice some stairs hiding among the rocks, and they climb them to find a hatch on top. They check inside to discover all the machines that keep the local dam running. The water pump model is the same as the power plants, so Nick deduces that the hacker wants to sabotage the dam to destroy the tin mines and make a fortune by buying tin options. The previous attacks had only been practiced to refine the code. Sometime later, the duo makes it to Indonesia and buys a bunch of tools that they set up with their computers in their room. Next, Nick gets in a car on top of a parking lot and pushes a van off the roof to make it fall on the hosting company's building, causing great damage. Soon, the area is filled with cops and emergency services. While everyone is distracted by the chaos, Nick sneaks in and connects his computer to the server to download some files and codes. All this is taken back to the room, where he and Lean check the information to confirm that the hacker has a third version of the rat and is indeed targeting the dam. They also get his real account information. The next day, Lean goes to the bank and tells the receptionist that she has a presentation with the manager, but she accidentally spilled coffee on her notes. He agrees to print her a new copy and connects her USB drive, which allows Nick to hack into the bank system and transfer all of the hacker's money to his own account. Then he sends the hacker a warning message with a phone number. Eventually, they get a call from Kasser. However, Nick demands to talk to the hacker and hangs up. The phone rings again, and this time it's Sadak, who is the real hacker and Kasser's boss. Nick pretends he wants to team up with Sadak, and they agree to meet. Expecting things to get dangerous, Leon brings a bunch of stuff from the store, and Nick creates some improvised protection for his body. He also hides some tools for self-defense. Nick asks Sadak to only bring Kasser. However, he shows up with all his men. Leon sees it from afar and warns Nick, who calls Sadak to change locations. In the evening, they go to the local festival, but Sadak brings his men again. They hide in the crowd and push dancers away if necessary. Nick tries to surprise Kasser from behind, but the man turns around and threatens him with his gun. When Kassar gets close enough to pat him, Nick moves quickly to grab his head and stab him with a screwdriver. Then Nick grabs Kassar's gun and approaches Sadak. But before he can shoot, Sadak's men open fire. The crowd panics while Nick fires back, getting hit a few times but also killing both thugs in return. Sadak has a knife and tries to attack Nick, but the blade gets stuck in his hood. A fight ensues, and Nick manages to break Sadak's arm, creating an opening